The story of Final Fantasy XIV, Episode 6, Heresy in the Icy North. Explorer recently joined the ranks of the Paladins, individuals sworn to protect the innocent and uphold justice. Despite this, she was unable to protect the majority of the Scions of the Seventh Dawn from being slaughtered by the Garlean Empire. The Garleans were partly looking for Explorer, but were happy to kill or capture everyone else present, including the Scion's leader, Minfilia. Explorer was off battling Titan at the time, returning only to the scene of the slaughter, but she took care to make sure the slain were buried properly, including the sylph, Neuraxia. While dealing with that, she was approached by Alphino, who seeks to continue the Scion's goals of protecting Eorzea, and revealed that Marquez, a traumatized victim of the calamity working at a church, is actually a master engineer named Cid Garland. Cid is regaining his memories, and joined up with Alphino and Explorer to find his long-lost airship, the Enterprise, supposedly located in the icy northern region of Kurthos, a place controlled by the kingdom of Ishgard. Explorer and Boko head north from Falgord Float in Gridania, entering a much colder region, Kurthos. Near the border, they find a settlement centered around an astrological observatorium. She was told that the astrologians here would likely have records of the Enterprise, and that she should offer her aid to the Ishgardians who live here in order to earn their favor. Unfortunately, the Ishgardians are a reclusive lot, and have no interest in offering aid of any sort to an outsider. While milling about, however, the guard at the front of the observatorium mentions that a knight he sent on a patrol hasn't returned, and he tells Explorer that if she really wants to help, she can go look for him. A very convenient opportunity if there ever was one, and after finding the knight and rescuing him from some unknown assailants, she returns to the observatorium. The guard quickly changes his tune and says that he'll tell the astrologians to listen to her request, although there's no guarantees. The Ishgardians are currently at war with a race of dragons, the Dravanians, and they also have a problem with Dravanian sympathizers, whom they have dubbed as heretics due to religious differences. The ones who assaulted the knight on patrol were some such heretics, and Explorer is told that access to the astrologian records is heavily restricted due to heretics potentially gaining valuable info about the war. Speaking with the chief astrologian, he is vehement that she not be allowed access, as he will not put their kingdom and its holy crusade at risk for a mere airship. At that moment, an Ishgardian inquisitor, Guillaume, approaches the two and not so subtly warns Explorer to keep out of Ishgardian affairs. Still left empty-handed but hoping to further endear herself to the Ishgardians, she heads off in search of a lost astrologian, finding him trapped and surrounded by Ixal, the bird-like beastmen that worship the wind primal Garuda. Rather than being grateful, however, the astrologian is disgusted at being rescued by an outsider. Back at the observatorium, she learns that, despite her efforts, she still won't be allowed to access the records, but she could petition House Durandare, who she's helped out twice now, to have her be introduced formally to the other Ishgardian high houses. Ingratiating herself with all of the high houses will likely lead her to the airship's location without needing the actual records. The Lord of Durandare she speaks with, however, says that she's aided them twice now, but wants to be introduced to 3 other houses, so it's only fair that she aid them one more time. She can't fault his logic, so she agrees to go to the scene of a robbery on the road and try and recover some stolen merchandise bound for Kurthos. At the scene of the crime, she does recover some merchandise, but is also attacked by a few more heretics. She brings the crates back, with one of them having been smashed open. Inside, they find a draconian rosary, a religious object held by the Dravanians and the Ishgardians who follow them. Since the crate was bound for a lord of House Aelinart, this causes quite a stir, especially since there have been rumors in the past of Aelinart being infested with heretics. This matter takes precedence over any sort of formal introductions, and the Inquisitors are informed. Explorer is approached by a Durandare knight, who tells her that Lord Francel, the supposed recipient of the rosary, is not a heretic, and Explorer should go to him and warn him of the situation. Explorer doesn't really have much skin in the game, so to speak, but it's probably best for all if an innocent house isn't condemned on false accusations, so she heads over to Francel. Francel, of course, vehemently denies the accusations, but knows that it won't do much good to the Inquisitors. As thanks for warning him, though, Francel gives a letter of introduction that she can give to Lord Orchefon of House Forton, who may have some more information about the missing airship. Orchefon runs the nearby fort of Camp Dragonhead, and proves to be quite friendly to Explorer even before she hands over the letter. He says that it will be a little tricky to find eyewitnesses to the fall of the Enterprise, as Ishgard was embroiled in their own conflict during that time. That being said, he sends out missives to various influential individuals within Ishgard who may be of help, and suggests that she continue to speak with others in Kurthos about it, stating that she is a friend of House Forton. Unfortunately, the others either don't have any information or don't have the time to help out, with everyone currently focused on the issue of heretics within Kurthos. Upon returning to Orchefon, he tells Explorer that Francel was seen heading north towards the Steel Vigil, along with 3 knights. The Steel Vigil was an Ishgardian outpost taken over by the Dravanian horde long ago, so he's not sure what Francel is hoping to accomplish. Explorer rides north to investigate, finding Lord Francel and his knights overwhelmed by a single Dravanian, which Explorer promptly slays. Francel says that he hoped they might prove their devotion to Ishgard by coming here to slay some of their enemies, since it was House Aelinart that lost the Steel Vigil in the first place, but obviously that didn't go too well. Orchefon is glad that Explorer was able to save them, and even better, he has found a witness to the final flight of the Enterprise. The bad news is that since Explorer has been seen consorting with Lord Francel, the witness doesn't want to be seen in the company of a woman who may later be declared a heretic. The only way to solve the problem then is to clear Francel's name, which would mean figuring out who planted the rosary in the locked chest bound for him. Explorer speaks with a man who works closely with the porters that ferry goods across Kurthos, who says that he has no reason to doubt the loyalty of the porters. Although he admits that since the only other culprits possible would be the Ishgardian knights responsible for inspection, the porters are the most likely to be responsible. Some more porters have just arrived in Camp Dragonhead, so Explorer heads over and tells one of them that she suspects they've been planting rosaries in the shipments. The porter is outraged by the accusation and tells her to search the packages to see what she finds. Sure enough, she finds some rosaries, to the utter confusion of the porter, who claims that once the knight concluded her inspection, he loaded the parcels onto the wagon himself, and if he knew they were in there, he never would have allowed Explorer to look. Telling Orchefon what she's found, he remarks that the culprits have clearly overplayed their hand by filling every shipment with rosaries, and even the Inquisitors should be able to see that. He begins working on a formal statement to be delivered to the church in Ishgard, and asks Explorer to speak with one of the Inquisitors in order to delay Francel's trial. Unfortunately, Explorer is too late, as the trial is already underway, and it seems they plan on executing him. Explorer rushes off to the site of the trial, where Francel continues to proclaim his innocence. Inquisitor Guillaume, however, only tells him to walk off the nearby cliff in order to be judged by the gods. Explorer arrives with one of Orchafon's knights, who tells the Inquisitor they've uncovered new evidence and the trial needs to be delayed. Guillaume, however, responds that Orchafon has allowed his personal relationship with Francel to cloud his judgment, and interfering with an Inquisitor's work is heresy. The Inquisitor's knights proceed to attack the two, but they manage to hold them off until Orchafon arrives with reinforcements. During the battle, a wyvern appears and attacks Explorer, and afterwards they find a draconian rosary on one of the Inquisitor's knights, suspecting that he was responsible for summoning the wyvern. Guillaume finally admits that there might be more going on here than he first assumed, and he withdraws his charges against Francel for the time being. Back at Camp Dragonhead, Orchafon thanks Explorer for her help in saving Francel, and says that now they can continue on to the issue of the Enterprise. She meets with the witness to its final flight, who says that he was at the observatorium when he saw a small vessel coming from Gridania that landed near the Stone Vigil to the northwest. The Stone Vigil is another military fort that used to belong to House Aelinart before being overtaken by the Dravanians. It's likely that the Dravanians captured it and hold it within the fort's walls now. House Durandare have been charged with reclaiming it, so Explorer will need their permission to enter it. Explorer would rather just gain the Dravanians' permission to enter, but protocol must be followed. Orchafon plans on writing a letter on her behalf to Lord Drillmont of House Durandare, and suggests that she ask Francel to do the same. Francel agrees to write the letter, although he doubts his will do much good, and warns Explorer to be cautious, as the ones that tried to frame him have still not been identified. She takes the two letters to Drillmont's fort to the west, and after getting the runaround from a number of different soldiers, she finally speaks with Drillmont himself, alongside Alphino and Cid. They explain to him that they need the Enterprise in order to slay the primal Garuda, and thus need access to the Stone Vigil. While they're trying to convince him, however, Guillaume shows up and tells him that the three of them are not to be trusted. Apparently, House Durandare is marshalling its forces to retake the Stone Vigil, so having a long-lost engineer and two members of an extinguished group suddenly show up and want access is a bit sketchy. Drillmont, of course, agrees with Guillaume, and says that the three of them won't step foot into the Vigil until Durandare has reclaimed it. Since Drillmont doesn't expel them from the premises, though, they decide that it still might be possible to earn his favor, and a chef working at the fort tells Explorer that if she wins over the soldiers, she'll win over Drillmont. The best way to do that, of course, is to give them a good meal, as they haven't had any meat in quite some time. Explorer heads off to slay a large lizard for some of its tail meat, and even though it doesn't turn out to be an especially good meal, the knights are grateful all the same. Meanwhile, Cid has been helping out the local medical personnel by crafting them some new tools, and has Explorer help out by gathering some ice sprite cores. Upon completion, Cid shows off the device to the Chirurgeons, who are quite astonished, but Guillaume shows up and tells them to be wary of kindly strangers. It seems that he still does not trust the group, and his words are more than enough to scare off the Chirurgeons. Efforts to earn Drillmont's trust will be in vain as long as they don't earn Guillaume's, so Explorer pokes around and asks others at the fort about the man in order to glean some useful info. Apparently, everyone at the fort are rather big fans of Guillaume and Inquisitors in general, believing them to be completely devoted to the Ishgardian cause. One knight she speaks to in the infirmary tells her about the night that Guillaume came to the fort, when he was on patrol outside of the eastern gate and saw a silhouette in the distance. The knight called out and gave chase, but unfortunately fell down and went unconscious. He woke up days later in the infirmary, learning that the silhouette belonged to Guillaume, who carried him back to the fort. Retelling this story to Alphino, he points out some odd details in the tale, noting that the main road in Kurthos leads to the fort's southwestern gate, not the eastern one. Since arriving here, no travelers have come through the eastern gate, and additionally, since the knight said that the silhouette was illuminated by the light from the city of Ishgard, that would mean that Guillaume came from the north of the eastern gate, not the south. The problem with that is that there's a massive chasm in that direction. Explorer retraces the supposed path of Guillaume, ending up down in the chasm, where she finds the buried corpse of a man identical to Guillaume. On the body, she finds a document from the church appointing him as an inquisitor, meaning that coming here was his first official assignment. Whoever the imposter is decided to murder him and assume his identity, with no one in Kurthos any wiser. Rather than take the evidence they have straight to Drillmont, they decide to try and convince the knight who was saved by the fake Guillaume to see if he can remember any other details from that night. The knight, of course, is not too interested in besmirching the name of the man who saved his life, but he does tell Explorer to go speak with another knight who was present during the incident. After some convincing, the other knight tells the full story of what happened. The wounded knight did not fall into a chasm, but was rather attacked by a Dravanian. When she rushed in to help, she instead heard a voice that knew intimate details about her life and told her that if she kept this secret, her and the other knight would be spared. She agreed, and the voice was revealed to be the fake Inquisitor. She's kept his secret all this time, knowing that he was responsible for planting rosaries on a number of innocent people in order to condemn them to death. When he accused Lord Francel, however, she was the one who stole a bunch of rosaries and planted them in the shipments, making the conspiracy incredibly obvious. Explorer finds the hidden chest where Guillaume has been keeping all of the rosaries, and she takes it to Drillmont along with the document and the stories she's been told. Faced with all of this, Drillmont has no choice but to agree that the Inquisitor is an imposter and apologizes to Explorer. He grants them access to the Stone Vigil, but first asks that they assist in dealing with the Dravanian imposter. The group rushes off to face the false Guillaume, who is in the midst of another trial condemning an innocent. Upon arrival, Lord Drillmont officially marks him as a traitor and heretic, but Guillaume says that he cannot be a traitor, as he cannot betray that which he owes no allegiance to. Instead, the Ishgardians' hands are black with the blood of those whose only sin was to question the kingdom's crazed crusade. Nevertheless, he does not come quietly, so a fight breaks out. During the battle, Guillaume summons some Dravanian allies and uses magic to appear as a dragon, but in the end, the Ishgardians are the victors. Knowing that his end is near, the fake Guillaume says that the families of the dead that he condemned will never forget him, and since blood has been repaid with blood, he is content. Drillmont leaves his body where it lies, and tells Explorer to meet him back at the fort to discuss the Stone Vigil. He's happy to have been proven wrong about Cid and the Scions, but doesn't think that they'll fare well in reclaiming the airship from the Stone Vigil, or if it's even in there. Although House Durandare plans on continuing to assault the fort in the hopes of wiping out the Dravanians present, Alphino says that they cannot wait for that, and plan on heading in on their own. That's rather bold talk, considering that Explorer is going to be doing most of the hard work, but Drillmont grants them permission. Explorer recruits a few other adventurers, and they march into the fort. The Stone Vigil turns out to be in shambles, and crawling with Dravanians of a number of different forms. The group is blasted with fire and ice as they sweep through, killing everything in their way. Some especially large draconic creatures attempt to stop them, but they too fall, until eventually they progress to the back of the fort, where they spot the damaged airship. Unfortunately, just in front of it is a massive sleeping dragon. Cid and Alphino sneak around it to try and fire up the airship, but none other than La Habrea shows up to throw a wrench in the engine. La Habrea taunts Explorer with his knowledge that she plans to fight Garuda, and even though he doesn't think that she'll win, he does admit that if any mortal could do it, it would be her. Of course, he can't resist making things a little bit more interesting, and he proceeds to wake the dragon, forcing Explorer to engage it in order to protect Cid and Alphino. The massive creature fights with fangs, claws, and great blasts of ice, threatening to freeze the group to their cores. Fortunately, this is just a stepping stone on the path to Garuda, and despite the size difference, Explorer slays the great beast. With the dragon dead, Explorer surprisingly finds yet another crystal of light, adding to her collection, totaling 5 now. Cid inspects the Enterprise and is able to make it fly, at least to get back to Gridania. His memories have still not yet completely returned, but his engineering knowledge is intact, at least. Now that they finally have an airship, they can begin to tackle the problem of taking on Garuda, who continues to get stronger as time goes by. Cid believes that he can fully repair the Enterprise back to fighting shape, but it may not be enough to actually breach Garuda's wind barrier. However, he comes to the idea of utilizing a corrupted crystal in order to modify the nature of the barrier itself, nullifying its potency. Corrupted crystals are those found around Eorzea that are overfilled with elemental energy, and although they are normally a big problem, as they can warp nearby energy, including that belonging to living creatures, Cid and Alphino believe they could use some to convert the wind barrier into an element that Garuda can't control. During his time at the church, Cid met an etheric scholar in Camp Drybone that would speak at length about ether, specifically in the form of corrupted crystals. Explorer is tasked with seeking out the scholar, while Cid and Alphino work on repairing the Enterprise. After a brief change of clothes into something more suitable for warmer climates, Explorer heads to Camp Drybone and finds the man, Lambertaint. She tells him that they're looking to harvest a corrupted crystal, and after warning her of the dangers involved in the task, gives her a special warded pot designed to hold the crystal safely. She's then directed to one of Lambertaint's students, who eagerly tells Explorer to head down into the area known as the Burning Wall, a location covered in large crystalline structures. To get the perfect sample they need, she has to head down to the deepest part of it. After being given a mallet, she dodges past the copious amounts of hostile creatures in the area and finds the sample she's looking for. She brings the sample back to Lambertaint to inspect it, who informs her that it's a perfect corrupted crystal overflowing with wind ether. Since they're trying to use a crystal to bypass a wind barrier, this won't help much, only serving to strengthen the barrier instead. Perhaps a little bit of communication would have saved some time and effort in the midst of a crisis. Nevertheless, Explorer is then directed to another of Lambertaint's students, one that has apparently found another site of corrupted crystals in western Lenasia. Explorer whisks off across the ocean to the town of Aleport, and meets with the student there, Kiana. Kiana believes that the area around the lighthouse on the nearby Isle of Umbra is filled with corrupted crystals, but so far she has been denied access to the isle by everyone she's asked. After poking around though, Explorer learns that the issue more has to do with no one wanting to go to the isle, believing it to be fully haunted by undead. Kiana overhears in the pub about a man that was detained after recently returning from the isle, who seems to be in a daze, wishing to return there. He mentions a man named Mimidoa, who Kiana says groped her the other day in the pub. Mimidoa turns out to be a rather gruff supervisor, placed in charge of rebuilding the lighthouse after it was damaged during the calamity. The men aren't really working, with half of them running off and half of them disappearing. He enlists Explorer to head to the island and scope out the situation. On the isle, a man guarding the area tells her that she's not allowed past the port due to the rumors about undead covering the island actually being true. They're covering the ship graveyard nearby, and he decides that if Explorer helps figure out why the undead have cropped up, he'll find her some of the corrupted crystals. It turns out that the isle is plagued by a siren, a creature that lulls people with a seductive song into the ocean, where they die and become her undead thralls. With the help of Mimidoa and some earplugs, she defeats a handful of undead and sends the siren packing, earning herself some nice, fire-aspected corrupted crystals. Obviously, turning Garuda's wind barrier into a fire barrier isn't going to work too well, and this goose chase is starting to get a little ridiculous. Explorer gets sent off to Gridania to speak with one of Kiana's associates, who has found some ice-aspected crystals. The crystals have all been eaten by a gluttonous Spriggan, so Explorer runs off, slaughters the Spriggan, digs through his entrails, and finally obtains the crystals they need. She brings them back to Cid and Alphino, who have finished the repairs on the Enterprise. They attach the device utilizing the crystals to the ship and sail off towards Garuda. On the way, Cid reveals that he is actually a native of Garlemald, the prodigal son of the most famous engineer in the Garlean Empire. His father became obsessed with the Meteor Project, which ended up causing the calamity, and Cid eventually fled Garlemald to come to Eorzea, joining their fight against his homeland.
Father, when did we stop seeing eye to eye? When did Meteor become your everything, and your loved ones cease to matter? And so I ran, left the Empire behind and came to Eorzea, where I built the ironworks. Eorzea opened my eyes. It was home to so many manner of people, each with their own hopes and dreams. People worth saving, and so I fought beside them. I wanted to prove that my knowledge could serve a nobler purpose. I wanted to prove that there was another way.
Cid finally regains all of his memories as they approach Garuda and break through her barrier, along with some other adventurers that they recruited. Standing in front of the Wind Primal, they discover that the Ixal that summoned her also brought some kobold and Amalja captives. Garuda is hardly frightened of Explora, and an epic battle takes place in the eye of a great hurricane. Garuda's tremendous winds buffet the group and threaten to send them flying, but they hold their ground. Garuda's force is strong enough to even blast apart rocks, but even that is not quite enough to topple a warrior of light. Eventually, Garuda is killed, or so it seems. Instead, she appears to be unfazed and only taunts the group of scions. She is kept alive by the intense faith of the Ixal, and things are starting to look quite grim. Although, when Garuda attempts to enthrall Explora, the Echo protects her. Hydaelyn's protection causes a crystal of light to emerge from Garuda, completing Explora's set of 6, although nothing seems to be immediately different because of it. The faith of the Ixal is shaken by this turnaround, but suddenly, Gaius Van Baelsar of the Garlean Empire shows up and taunts Garuda.
O Lady of the Vortex, O mighty Garuda! Of all primals the most terrible, I say again, is that all?
A group of Ixal charge at him, but he easily dispatches them with a Magitech weapon. Instead of attacking the Scions or Gaius, Garuda attacks the captive kobolds and Amalja, who cry out to their primals, Titan and Ifrit.
Our Lord of the Inferno, Almighty Ifrit, grant us succor in our hour of need!
Save us, Titan, Lord of Crags! It hurts us so! The pain! The pain!
Their prayers are answered as they die, causing the two primals to be summoned. That's quite a bit more than Explora can handle, so the Scions flee. Garuda plans on feasting on the other primal's ether in order to make herself stronger, but Gaius instead finally reveals his ultimate weapon, a massive biomechanical machine.
Bear witness to the glory of the Empire!
The machine easily dispatches Titan and Ifrit in a matter of seconds, and absorbs their energy into itself. Gaius says that this machine was created by an ancient civilization known as the Allagan Empire, for the specific purpose of slaying primals.
Ancient Alleg had ways of dealing with your kind. Now, look on their ultimate weapon, Icon, and despair.
No! No! No!
Magnificent. It exceeds all expectation.
Gaius tells the Scions to return to the leaders of Eorzea's city-states and tell them to surrender, as not even Explora can deal with such a weapon. Out of the frying pan, Alphinaud says that on the bright side, no beast tribe will dare summon a primal while such a primal-killing machine exists in Eorzea. That means the remaining Scions can focus on rebuilding the organization and taking down the Garlean Empire, starting with rescuing the individuals they kidnapped. Explora has proven herself to be quite capable so far, taking down multiple primals and contending with other particularly ferocious creatures. But the speed at which this ultimate weapon slew the three primals is certainly frightening. She's gathered all 6 crystals of light, for whatever purpose it serves, but she'll definitely need some help from the rest of the Scions if she hopes to fend off the Garlean Empire and the Ascians. And ideally, a bit more help from Hydaelyn.